Der Titel des nächsten Panels und Diskussion ist Pathways to Equality, Excellence and Wellbeing, Learning from High-Performing School Systems. Und ich übergebe jetzt aber an meine Co-Moderatorin Remote, die hier das gemeinsame Gespräch moderieren wird, und zwar Professor Dr. Phil Anne-Slivka, Professorin für Bildungswissenschaft an der Universität Heidelberg, als Host der Session.
Der Übertragung. Yes, so welcome, Brandy and Matti. So welcome to California and welcome to Finland. Very exciting to be able to talk to you. I think we've got about 20 minutes for a conversation among the three of us. And then we have 10 minutes for the audience to ask questions to, I guess, mostly you guys. Because this is a unique opportunity to learn more about high-performing school systems. I should say that Brandy is originally Canadian and recently moved to California. And I met Brandy as when she was still a teacher vice principal. Then she did her PhD and became a school principal in Calgary, Alberta, a city in a very highly performing school system. And now she is an academic, a professor at California Lutheran University. And Matti, we've known each other for a very long time now. You are based in Jyväskylä, Finland, which is a well-known university, I think the oldest Finnish university for teacher education, and also the seat of the Finnish National Institute for Educational Research. And you are in charge of teacher education in Jyväskylä. So I think we can have a conversation about high-performing school systems, because both Finland and Canada have consistently ranked highly in the OECD PISA study, which has been conducted every 3 years since 2000. And let me ask you to start out. Well, Canada and Finland have both been high-performing school systems for quite some time now. What do you think are the secrets of these countries' success? I don't know who wants to go first.
Matti, I'll let you go first if you would like.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I can start. So thank you, Anne. It's nice to be here and discuss a very interesting and important topic. And about the question you asked, I would like to emphasize two processes important for the story of success when Finland is under inspection, if I may say so. And first one goes to history, to the birth of welfare state in 1960s and 1917, and the momentum of school reform in Finland. That age was radical in Finnish society, not only because of school reform, but all in all, radical new goals based on equality, social justice, and democracy were passed through the society. And the school and education in general had a key role in this process, implementing the promise of democracy, equality, and social justice, as mentioned. And the new school reform then was similar for all, 9 years, and totally different when compared to the previous parallel system, which was unequal because poor people couldn't educate themselves. They just didn't have enough money for that. Or of course they got the basic education, but they didn't have money for the continuing studies. But in the new system, social security system supported those poorer people and gave them the possibility for all to study in the society as much as they wanted. And that was, of course, important thing. There was no limit for education. for anyone anymore, because the supporting system was, especially in the beginning, it worked very well. And the new mental atmosphere, of course, was important, and it emphasized education for all as well as possibilities for all. And because of this principle and idea, our children today go to the nearest school they have, because differences in learning results between schools in basic education are very small. In addition, today people trust school and teachers, and we also have a highly respected teacher education, which was reorganized in 1970s. And all in all, trust towards school teachers and education, because we all have experiences how important these goals are in education as individual, is one of the bases we have.
Great. Yeah, there's a clear priority, it seems, for education, and a very strong consensus in Finnish society that education comes first, that it really matters, that it can make a difference, and that it needs reform, it needs change in order to flourish. So what about Canada, Brandy? Perhaps you can share a little bit the story of Alberta, which is now one of the highest performing school systems in the entire world.
Mm-hmm. So, it's interesting. And I think I want to talk a little bit about the history related to the PISA results, right? So it was interesting. I was looking at the data again yesterday. And so Canada, unlike Finland, we don't have a national system of education. So, a guaranteed basic education is, part of our constitution. It's a right afforded to all the children in the country, but each of the provinces and the territories very much, governs and controls the own system of education within the province or territory. So across the country, you'll see a lot of variance and a lot of differences. I think one of the interesting things that perhaps we don't want to talk about a lot is that when they show our PISA scores, a lot of the data is actually disaggregated. And so when they're looking at some of the scores related to mathematics and science and those kinds of things, they're only showing scores representing some provinces. And so it's not a Canadian average, unfortunately. And so I think that that's something that we need to examine as a country, why some provinces perform, very well, and then why some provinces perform actually below some of the PISA averages. And so Alberta, the province that I recently came from, typically is, one of the leaders. They score very high, in all of the standardized tests of achievement. I think as the government goes, often the public perception of education will start to sway. So where we have been strong in Alberta is when the government has had ideas about what it would mean to be an educated citizen, into the future. And so we've had a vision of what that looks like, but we've also had a curriculum that would match that vision of moving forward. And so when there was the alignment of the vision for what it would mean to be an educated citizen, and when we had a curriculum that supported that, I felt that we were the strongest, and I felt that we were doing the best job for our students. In terms of the high-performing system in Alberta, we have a lot of courageous teachers and a lot of courageous leaders in the province within each of the school settings that ensure that the vision for what's best for children is enacted or created in the learning environment for those students. And so I think the pockets of brilliance that we have is not necessarily due to the system in Canada, but it's due to the courageous leadership and the courageous, courageous leadership of our instructional leaders and the expertise of our teachers in ensuring that our students are receiving the personalized education that they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I heard quite a lot of interesting terms that I think will be very useful for our discussion in Germany. So Brandy, you made the point that leadership really matters. So we need really strong leadership in education. And you also used the term vision. And Matti, I think you used the term strategy and change. So there was obviously a deliberate effort for change in Finland. It wasn't just incremental change. It was a deliberate decision that Finland as an education system took to make this change happen. And Brandy, you also mentioned the term alignment, pointing out how important it is that people work together towards a change and towards a vision. And that's something I can detect in both of your answers, saying there was a vision, there was leadership, there was alignment, so people walking into the same direction and having the same aims, the same goals, and really putting education first.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I think so. So in 2013, we had a government at the time that they engaged in, a long-term kind of, it was engaged with the key stakeholders. I think that they were seeing that there was gaps between, what our students were graduating from grade 12 with and what they were transitioning to post-secondary with, and then what skills they had to go into careers afterwards. And so there was an engagement process that was essentially, and it seemed like a long time ago now, but it doesn't seem so right now, was what would it mean to be an educated Albertan in the year 2025? Mm-hmm. And so they engaged with, community partners, business, industry, teachers, and they really came up with what we called the Ministerial Order on Student Learning. So that was in 2013. And the previous ministerial order was very much based on an industrial model of education, right? That served the population well in the 60s, but not anymore into the 21st century. And so the vision of education that came out of that, consultation process is that we would create engaged thinkers, ethical citizens, with the spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation and creativity, right? And so it fundamentally changed the way we thought of what it meant to be educated in Alberta. And then we allowed the principals, the instructional leaders, and the teachers to create a responsive curriculum within the schools that would support our students.
But it's kind of like a backward design process. So first you had a vision of what it means to be an educated Albertan, and then you kind of decided, how does our practice have to change? How does the administration have to change? How does our curriculum have to change in order to make this work? Did I get this right?
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so strong consensus around education. And that's, I think, something that we don't see in Germany. We see a lot of voices, we see a lot of divergence in these voices, and people don't necessarily have a common vision of where we are going to in education. And I think, Matti, is it correct that that was the same story? So the stories are actually quite similar, the stories of Alberta and the stories of Finland.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely the similar one, because what I would like to stress in the story of Finland is that it's the peaceful development of school and education, because after the political fight in the 1970s, after that period, all political parties have said the same idea. The school has important role in the society when building welfare state. Based on the values I mentioned, equality, justice, democracy, etc. So this consensus has ensured a long period, peaceful period in the history of school in Finland. So, and in practice, this has many visible characters, like curriculum for basic education. For example, the new one from 2016 has roots in the first curriculum for common comprehensive school in the year 1970. So they are kind of a continuum. Our teachers know that there won't be U-turns after election, because they know that there is still kind of a stable development behind the political movement as well, and the politics. So one way or another, we can say that the development of school is beyond daily politics, which is important for the experts in the field.
That is a really important point for us, I believe, because we still have a situation in which competing political parties argue for competing visions of education, whereas what you both are saying is you need one vision, you need one collective vision of what education is about. And it should be based on fundamental values of where the society is heading and what a society values. And then you have a strong storyline, a strong narrative evolving out of this that bring people together around a vision of education and overcome these fractures, these barriers in the discourse. And I think that is a really important message, and hopefully we'll later get some questions about this. I want to use our remaining 8 minutes to talk about education post-COVID. It's a little bit tricky to say post-COVID in a country where numbers are actually going up. As I told you earlier, we've had quite a high number of new COVID infections today as I'm talking. But in terms of schools, I think internationally, I notice a new focus on well-being, student well-being, even staff well-being in schools. And COVID is certainly not the only reason for this, but seems to have triggered some kind of new discourse. So I think it would be really interesting for us to learn how this is playing out in Finland, in Canada, and perhaps even in California, Brandy, because now you're based in California, and it's a universal pandemic, so it touches all of our lives. So perhaps let's talk a little bit about well-being in the context of schooling. What does it mean? What do you see emerging? What kind of trends do you see emerging from this global situation? So who wants to go first?
You know, I'll go first, Matti, if that's okay here with this one.
Sure.
You're right, Anna. I think that the conversation related to student wellness, student well-being, mental health, and how that impacts the teaching and learning environment is not a new conversation. You know, and even when I was doing my research with you, you know, that was like 7 years ago now. It was something that, you know, kept me up at night, that I wondered about. I think that, you know, if we can think of some of the things that we have learned that have perhaps, you know, forced conversations and moved our education systems forward because of COVID, I think it was something that we could no longer ignore, you know, during the pandemic, you know, when we had students that, you know, were removed from a face-to-face environment, that we didn't have that daily opportunity to look at them, to get that pulse, that sense of, you know, how they were feeling in the classroom. We had to look at different ways of how we would support them, right? And how we would support our teachers in not only dealing with, you know, the pedagogy, the content in the classroom, but how we support, you know, student mental health. So the positive that I have related to that now that's come out of the pandemic is that, you know, school systems, I know here in California and then also in Alberta, there's been an intentionality behind a couple of things, how we've changed our teacher preparation programs. So all of the teacher preparation programs right now that I'm involved in have a component related to how teachers support, you know, student mental health wellness in the classroom, but how they also attend to their own, you know, wellness as professionals. And then I also know that what has been added to the curriculum in an intentional way, not just as you know, we're going to have an assembly or an event, but what has been added to the curriculums in an intentional way are pieces related to mindfulness and wellness and, you know, stress and anxiety. So there's intentionality behind that, because I think what we've realized that unless we address those pieces first, we don't get to the content of the curriculum, or we don't address it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, yes, I'm with you. Marty, what about Finland? Do you have the same kind of discourse, the same kind of developments emerging?
Yes, we have. Yeah, well-being has been very hot topic in Finland, in the whole society, and also in education from preschool level to higher education for years now. And well-being is already part of national curriculum as a cross-curricular theme. But I think it doesn't seem to be enough at the moment, because in a very new general upper secondary schools curriculum since August 2021, well-being has already been as a competence in each subject In each subject there is a description of what well-being is in social studies, in history, in sport, in math, and so on. So that's I think that's a trend the basic education will follow when they start the process for new curriculum. In the future, I don't know when.
To break it down even on the subject level. I mean, we are far away from this. I think the discussion about well-being and schooling is only just emerging in Germany, and so the fact that you are saying it's already in your curricula and not just as a general idea, it's been broken down to the curricula of each individual school subject. That is a pretty amazing development. I think that's happening there. So do you think that California / Canada and Finland are already there, or where do you see this going? Sort of,
well,
I would never, the pandemic changing to right now?
I think that there's a lot of work to be done, but I think that the pandemic has forced conversations and probably forced changes in practice that perhaps would have taken longer for us to get to kind of the point we are at right now.
The interesting thing is, in Germany, everybody seems to be saying that hybridization and digitization of learning is what the pandemic is forcing us to do. And now we are talking about an entirely different discourse. We're not talking about digitization, we're talking about well-being. So where do you see the link between those two emerging fields of change in education? Is there a nexus? Is there a connection? Are we talking about well-being because digitization, because our lives have become so digital, because we are spending so much time in front of screens, or do you not see any connection between those two areas?
Well, I certainly did, like as a principal of a middle junior high school, I saw the impact of, and I do think that technology, when it's used effectively and wisely, can go a long way to support, enhance, extend student learning. I think the overabundance of social media and the impact that has on the lives of children is very concerning. And so there's a whole digital world and a sense of connection and relationships that was emerging that was very concerning. I think one of the things that happened during the pandemic was that it forced teachers to re-examine the why. The why behind why we've done a lot of things the way that we've done things. I think it opened up the teaching and learning practice to families in a way that they had never had an eye on what we did before. That sometimes was a good thing, and sometimes it created some challenges. I think that it for the society as a whole, it gave them a really good sense of the importance of teachers and how we support students, not just in the curriculum, in the learning of content and disciplinary knowledge, but the role of teachers in really supporting the whole development of the child. And so teachers do the content and the delivery of the curriculum well, but the most important thing is that relationship. So they know the student and they know how to make that content come alive for the student in the context of the relationship. And so when those relationships, those face-to-face relationships were removed, then I think that the value and the importance of a school, the schooling experience, the teacher and the student relationship was really highlighted. Yeah, so you're saying relationship has come out of the pandemic as a winning factor. That is really interesting. What about you, Matti? What is your take on things?
Yeah, I think the digital world is the world of young people, so they are used to be there, they are used to work there, and of course we can use that world to get learning much more interesting, to get learning much more learner-centered, it can help the well-being, because the help is probably more easier to get in the online versions than, I mean, in real life. For example, in Finland, it's very difficult to, get the time for school psychology, because, there's so much of different kind of problems young people are facing, but only few school psychologists in the area of cities, for example. But new kind of digital solutions have offered a lot of help for this problem. Not enough, but help. So I think they are one way or another linked, because digital world can, of course, weaken well-being, but it can also strengthen it. So it's up to us how we,
shape it.
formulate our word.
Yes. I believe now is the time to open up our discussion and invite some questions. So I have to ask Franziska how this is working. Okay.
I think I'm online, am I? Yes, I am. So
Yes,
thank you very
yes,
much
you
for the amazing discussion. Yeah, I can see there's also discussion in the chat. We don't have so many questions, but a running discussion. One question is, people need balance in their own system. To stay in balance, you need goodwill and empathy. Stress does the opposite. So how can we practice this attitude and the competence of empathy in order to bring the scales into balance again and again, to be on the way from ego to eco? Question in the round.
Okay. So how do we get empathy into schools? I guess that's the question. And I understand that it's about the professionals. It's about the professionals in the school system. So how do we strengthen their empathy? And maybe we can talk about collaborative cultures here, because one thing I noticed is that both of your systems are quite collaborative. So as a teacher, you don't feel that you're on your own, whereas we still have a very isolated practice in Germany, it seems. We still have many teachers struggling on their own in the classroom. And that might be one pathway towards empathy in schools to make it work.
I think one thing that has emerged from the pandemic certainly is a sense of a shared experience, that it is something that we have all gone through together. And so I think that inherently builds an empathy that, I understand, what you have gone through, and that we have, how do we come together to support each other in terms of supporting our work as teachers. But there's also been an attitude of needing to support teachers so the teachers can support students. You're looking at the collaborative nature of, schooling in Alberta. One of the things that there was the luxury of is that, built into the School Act and, our contractual obligations was that there were professional learning days that were guaranteed every month.
Yeah.
Right. And so those kind of opportunities, I think that the focus on them has shifted perhaps in the past, 5 years, but certainly, during and, as we start to emerge from the pandemic, that it is the focus more is coming together as a staff to support each other, to connect, for those check-ins in a very intentional way, to ensure that the well-being of the staff is front and center, so they can do the hard work on the front lines with the students. And I think that's been a shift, certainly.
So teachers need each other in order to do good work for students. Is that what you're saying? They need each other's.
It is. And and I don't know if you remember back, so Sharon Friesen from the University of Calgary did some work on the teaching effectiveness framework. And so there was 5 principles in that, but one of the principles was that teachers improve their practice in the company of peers. Yeah. And so there is the spirit of not sitting behind a closed, locked door in a classroom, but how we make our practice, visible to students, but visible to others, so we can be in a continuous cycle of improvement.
Yeah.
We have another. Yeah,
we have another question.
Yeah, we have another question, but I think you can answer it in a short way, because it's, do you think that the funding of the education systems in Germany, Finland, Canada, USA are sufficient, and why not?
And why not?
And why not?
Okay. So what about you? Do you think it's sufficient in Finland, Matti? Is funding sufficient? I know that the students get a free warm meal during the day. That's something I've always been in great admiration of, that the school meal is free for everybody. So there's no stigma attached to those children who get free school meals as in other countries.
That's
because
great.
Everybody gets a free school meal. But what about funding apart from this?
Yeah, it's true. We have had since 1940s free meal for all children in school. I think, well, of course, it's always a big question when we have elections that we should have savings in education, and all the parties promise that they won't cut anything from the education. But I think it's pretty good situation when I look, for example, the new school buildings in Finland. They are like paradises. I mean, they are so beautiful, nice places with different kind of facilities offered for teachers and students. And I think the situation is pretty good. But of course, the differences between cities are getting bigger. So, but shortly said, I think it's pretty good. Of course, people are complaining, but that's what we do anyway.
I can confirm that. I mean, as a visitor from Germany, I certainly love your school buildings. The furniture makes a difference. The design makes a difference. The space, the light. These are really friendly places where people enjoy spending time, and you can see that Finnish education really values, Finnish society really values education by building these beautiful schools with really nice equipment and a touch of design, very modern design in education buildings.
Yeah, and the basic principle is that school offers everything. So everything you need in school will be offered by school. So that's quite a good situation for pupils, from the viewpoint of pupils, including everything.
So I don't think that there will ever be enough, funding for education. I'll say it very quickly. And I think that the priorities for funding for education, are strategic depending on the particular government in power. I think that we need to be more I know that there's a finite amount of money, but I think that we can be more strategic for ensuring that the funds are diverted to the areas in education that are most needed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Maybe you can have a look at the chat, because the discussion is really interesting between all our participants too.